To be with you on a Tuesday and live on the Radio Northwest Network. I'm always glad to get your phone calls and your emails, and I'm always glad to talk to Joe Kent, who is running for the United States Congress, hoping to replace, he's one of several who are hoping to replace Jamie Herrera Butler as the member of Congress from Washington's 3rd Congressional District. And Joe has also served as a Special Forces warrant officer and the Gold Star husband of fallen soldier Shannon Kent, who was killed by ISIS terrorists. Joe, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me on, Lars.
Hey, I want to ask you about one thing that happened yesterday that I was actually happy to see, and I wonder whether Washington State's Republican Party has the guts to do this. Did you see what Wyoming's Republican Party did to Member of Congress Liz Cheney?
Oh, I sure did. That was well-deserved. It was good that the Wyoming GOP pretty much stripped her membership. So I'd like to see the same thing happen with Jamie Herrera Butler and Dan Newhouse.
You took the words right out of my mouth, because I guess all I'm saying is that this is the only time in my history of covering politics, more than 40 years, that I can remember a party doing that. But do you know how often the average voter, average citizen, writes me an email and say, why don't we just kick these people out of the party and say, you don't represent us? And I said, well, I'd love to see it happen, but in all my time of reporting on stuff like this, I've never seen it happen, and I don't think they have the guts to do it. Maybe we need a push like that to say, if you become completely unhinged, like Liz Cheney or Jamie Herrera Butler, maybe the party should send you a message. You no longer represent Republicans in the state of Washington.
No, absolutely. And Jamie Herrera Butler has definitely, risen to meet that standard, voting to certify the election, voting for impeachment, voting to stop construction of the border wall. I mean, the list just goes on and on. She continues. I mean, she voted for the January 6th Commission, which has led to the DOJ targeting people like Steve Bannon, like Mark Meadows. So, I mean, the list goes on. And every single Republican Central Committee, with the exception of one in the 3rd Congressional District, has censured Jamie Herrera Butler. So the district itself is sending a very loud and strong message. So hopefully the state follows suit and we censure Jamie and Dan Newhouse.
Yeah, and because the other side will play by those rules. I don't know if you saw earlier today, but Paul Gosar, a member of Congress, is now being censured by the Congress. First time it's happened in a decade. It's only happened 24 times in the history of the country. And why? Because he posted an anime that appeared to suggest something like, violence toward AOC. But geez, politics is like that. And when people say, oh, no, we have to be polite, I said, go back and read about some of the things that Abraham Lincoln had said about him and what he said about some of his critics. He called them copperheads. And there was a meaning. It's all terms of art from the day. But it's not like politics has been this, Marquis of Queensberry sport over the last couple of hundred years in America. It's a rough and tumble sport. And are we really going to see bodies? I mean, you're talking about holding Jamie to her votes and to her positions on the issues, the way Wyoming held Liz Cheney to her actions. And the Democrats are saying, let's go out and defame a bunch of GOP members because they use some rough humor. I mean, there's a difference between rough humor and saying, I'm going to vote against the border wall. One is rough, some rough language or rough pictures or whatever. The other one is actual concrete actions that have a bearing on people's security.
Yeah, and are we going to censure the former Senator Kamala Harris, now the vice president, for actively supporting the rioters who were burning down cities all summer? I mean, there's two separate sets of rules, obviously, but the Republicans will just complain about it, but then do nothing about it. I want to see every single Republican member of Congress and the Senate defend Representative Paul Gosar, because he stands up for his constituents consistently. He is an absolute hawk about defending our country, and now the Democrats are going after him because he's effective for this silly anime cartoon or whatever reason they found. We have to quit letting the Democrats dictate the rules of war to us.
Well, and the crazy thing is that they say, oh, you can't use that kind of rough language. My goodness. And the Republicans just sit there like they sit on their thumbs and they don't say anything, like they've got no guts. That's why when I saw the news about Wyoming last night, I said, finally, Republicans with a backbone.
Yeah, exactly. It shows that we can actually stand up and we can hold our leaders to account and we can make stands. And that's exactly what needs to happen. We have to quit letting the Democrats pick all the rules and then control the narrative.
I'll tell you what, I'll send a note to Caleb Heimlich, who's the GOP chair, and I'll say, hey, Caleb, if you put this to a vote, of representatives, in the Republican Party of Washington, do you think Jamie would survive that vote? And if not, then put it to a vote. Put it to a vote and see whether or not they still consider her a Republican representative of the people in her district or her state. And I think that's fair. Let's talk about Steve Bannon for a moment. I've met Bannon a couple of times over the years. I don't have anything bad to say about him. I do think that this is just making him a political target. And I keep pointing out to people, he left the White House in 2017. They want to question him about what happened on January 6th, 3 years and then some after he left the employ of the federal government. This is a dangerous thing to start doing to American citizens.
Yeah, whether you like Steve Bannon or you completely dislike him, I don't think that's the issue. The issue is our Department of Justice going after individual citizens for really just exercising the First Amendment. I mean, really, in the last week, we've seen Project Veritas get targeted, and now we're seeing Steve Bannon get targeted by the Department of Justice. And recently, we had Merrick Garland tell us that, moms and dads that showed up to school board meetings weren't going to be labeled as domestic terrorists. He lied right to Congress because now we have a whistleblower that submitted documents saying that the FBI was indeed targeting moms and dads showing up at these school board meetings. So what we're seeing is that the Department of Justice is just completely and totally out of control. They're not defending U.S. cities as they burn. Instead, they're doing these partisan witch hunts, and this is what needs to stop.
Well, and on top of that, as you mentioned, Merrick Garland has actually sicked the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office on parents who show up and loudly complain about the kind of things being done to their kids in school. When they're willing to use all these arms of government, arms of law enforcement, to which we give, extraordinary when you were a Special Forces warrant officer, we gave you all kinds of great tools. They were powerful weapons, but you weren't supposed to use them on your own people. Now you've got the FBI and the DOJ being used as weapons against people that the Biden administration disagrees with. This is all out warfare, isn't it?
No, it is, and we're on a very slippery slope to becoming a banana republic and becoming a totalitarian style of government. This is stuff that I saw overseas, where we see the tools of federal law enforcement being used against citizens. You're exactly right. When I was in the military, we were given a large amount of power and a large amount of tools by the people. But if the people can't trust us, if we can't trust our law enforcement agencies, we can't trust our intelligence agencies, if we can't trust any of these institutions, our society will crumble. That's a big reason why I'm running for Congress. We need to restore the trust of the American people in these powerful institutions, or we will lose the republic that has been bequeathed to us.
Absolutely. Joe, where can people find you on the web? Joe Kent is one of those seeking the Republican nomination. Where do they find you?
JoeKentForCongress.com.
Very good. Joe, thank you so much for your service in uniform. I'm sorry about the loss of your wife to those ISIS terrorists. I wish you well.